So this beautiful book is called One World, and it's by Michael Foreman. And it says, the world is in our hands. And look, it's got a whale on the front. I love whales. And on the back, the blurb says, a brother and sister spend their day playing on the beach by a rock pool. They create their own tiny marine world in a bucket, and with its wildlife, shells, oil, and even a tin can, it is a microcosm of the larger world outside. So it's like a mini version of the world outside. With a series of stunning watercolours, this multi-award-winning Michael Foreman, so the author and illustrator has won lots of awards, makes clear his underlying concern about pollution within the environment. So let's have a look at this lovely book. Here's the first page. One sky, one sun, one moon, one world. A little girl stood still at the edge of the world and looked up at the sun. She watched it go down at the end of the day. That night she watched the moon rise and the stars come out. There we go. Maybe you've seen the moon come out. Maybe you've seen the stars come out. Stars are harder to see, but you can usually see the moon. And as she watched, she thought of all the creatures who lived under the sky. The animals who shared the warmth of the sun and bathed in the soft silver light of the moon. There we go, there's that beautiful picture. Which animals can you spot there? Lots of animals in that picture. Bathing in the light of the moon. The next day, the little girl and her brother stood at the edge of a pool by the sea. They looked into the clear water. So there we go. The rocks in the pool stood like mountains, their peaks white with old barnacles. So there we go. There's lots of children playing by the beach. So when the sea comes in, so the sea comes in and the sea goes out again, that's called the tide. And it washes over the beach, and you'll see all these like rocks around, and in between the rocks the water will be caught in between the rocks, and that will be a rock pool. And then when the sea goes back out, it will leave the water, that will be the rock pool. And children will come and they will play in the rock pools and explore them. And when the sea comes back in again and whooshes over the beach, it will refill the rock pool with lots of little tiny sea creatures and new fresh water from the sea. Each time a wave washed through a gap in the rocks, dark forests of weeds waved as though they were trees in the wind. Tiny fish darted into the shadows, past sea anemones like flowers in a secret garden. Look at that tin can, cried the boy. It's a sunken ship full of buried treasure. And as they watched, they saw starfish move slowly amongst a galaxy of shells and pebbles, round as moons. On the surface of the pool, 2 feathers bobbled in a blob of oil. So let's have a good look at that beautiful picture. Can you see all those things? So there are the children at the top looking down into this rock pool. And we've got the seaweed, and we've got the sea anemones down here. And then we've got starfish. And then let's see, what else can we spot? There's the tin can. There's a fish. And then we've got the blob of oil here. And the feathers at the top. The girl dipped her bucket into the pool and half filled it with water. She dropped a little sand into the bucket and watched it drift down to the bottom. So here she is filling her bucket from the rock pool. And watching down to the bottom of the pool. There we go. Her brother found stones covered in seaweed. Put them in the bucket. Together the children watched the leaves swaying in the water. Then they added other kinds of seaweed and coloured stones and shells. They admired their tiny new world, but it still needed something. It needed more life. So there we go. Let's have a look. They've created this whole little world in a bucket. at this. Beautiful. So the boy chased a shrimp with his net. So we go, you couldn't put a whale in a bucket, but you could put a little shrimp. He imagined the shrimp was a whale. Amazing. In a short time, he caught 2 shrimps and 3 small fishes. He dropped them carefully into the bucket and watched them swim around. So there he is watching them swimming around in the bucket. And on the other side, there's his sister. So this is the bucket here in the middle, and they're watching on either side. The 2 children had made their own world. It was a new world with its own forests, its own life. Together they held their world in their hands. So there they are, holding the world in their hands. All the long afternoon they tended their tiny world. They added more seaweed, shells and 3 more fish. But the more they added to their world, the more they took from the real world. The only things now floating in the pool were the feathers and the blob of oil. Oh dear, that poor little rock pool is not full of life any longer. Ooh, let's look at this picture now. The oil had now spread across the surface and formed a rainbow over the upturned sky of the pool. But as it spread, the pool began to turn cloudy, and the constellations of shells and starfish disappeared, just as the moon and stars are hidden when the forests of the world are burned. So this oil, it doesn't belong in the rock pool. It shouldn't be there. It's spoiling the beauty. And not just the beauty, but it's not good for it either. Oil is very bad for the environment. When it spills in the water, that's not good. The pool, which had reminded the children of the beauty of the world, now showed how easily it could be spoiled. It reminded them of the larger world they knew, where forests were disappearing in the clouds of smoke and people in towns were poisoning the land and the seas. A world where creatures even in far-off snows and the deepest oceans were not safe. Let's have a good look at these pictures. So the forests burning, all the pollution being pumped out of cities and factories. And over here, even creatures in far-off, cold lands still not safe from all the trouble that's being caused by humankind. Their little pool seemed so small and the world so big, just a drop in the ocean really. What can we do? Cried the boy. You could help me, said the girl, and together they removed the tin can and dropped 1 feather and the blob into it. They used the other feather to skim off the oil. Carefully they returned all the things from the bucket to the larger world of the pool. Soon the tide would return and join the pool to the wide world of the ocean. So they have cleaned the rock pool, they have removed the rubbish, the tin can that did not belong there, and they have removed the pollution of the oil. They've got rid of that as well, and they've put back everything that belonged there that they shouldn't have taken. The children left the beach as the day cooled and the sun sank into the sky. Their bucket held only the tin, the oil and the feathers. They wondered what the evening tide would bring. In the morning they would check all the pools. We can ask the other children to help, said the girl. So in the morning they can check the pools and see how they can help to keep their part of the world clean and free of pollution. You can see the beautiful sea here, the tide coming in, and there's a bird here. We can see the sun setting, but then we can also see in the distance, despite all the beauty, we can see the pollution over there. Look at the final couple of pages. That night the children watched the moon and the stars. They thought about all the other children who lived under the sky, who needed the warmth of the sun and the soft silver light of the moon. So there they are, looking up at the moon with their cuddly toys. They all lived on one world, and that world too they held in their hands. So what you do makes